We all say we want happiness, success and peace, but then we push it away when it comes. We pick fights in healthy relationships, procrastinate on dreams, or shrink when opportunity knocks. This isn't weakness, it's self-sabotage. A powerful unconscious force within us often works against our highest goals. Why? Because it's trying to protect us from rejection, from failure, from repeating old wounds. Until we understand the hidden roots of self-sabotage, we'll keep reliving the same cycles, no matter how much we try. Real change begins when we stop shaming ourselves and start listening to the parts of us that resist growth. The sabotage isn't random, it's a message. If you can decode it, you can finally get free. Self-sabotage isn't a flaw in your character, it's a defense mechanism built for survival. It may look like laziness, procrastination, picking the wrong partner, or pushing away success, but at its core, it's a protective strategy developed by your unconscious mind. Most self-sabotage arises not from a desire to fail, but from a desire to stay safe. Somewhere in your past, often in childhood, you learned that being visible, taking risks, speaking your truth, or even being happy came with consequences: rejection, shame, punishment, or abandonment. So the mind created an internal system to keep you within a safe zone, even if that zone is painful or limiting. Every time you near a breakthrough, that old protective pattern flares up, whispering, "Don't go too far. It's dangerous out there." What looks like self-destruction is often self-preservation, just outdated. The tragedy is, we shame ourselves for these patterns, thinking we're weak, undisciplined, or broken, but in truth we're just carrying around a strategy that once worked. A child who learned to stay small to avoid parental anger will often grow into an adult who subconsciously fears visibility, even if they consciously crave success. The defense becomes internalized and automatic. So when something good approaches, like a new relationship, a career opportunity, or a chance to express yourself, you sabotage it, not because you don't want it, but because your nervous system still thinks it's dangerous. The closer you get to change, the louder the inner alarm rings. Recognizing that self-sabotage is a defense can be liberating. It shifts the story from "what's wrong with me" to "what is my system trying to protect me from?" That question opens the door to real healing. You stop waging war against yourself and instead begin a dialogue. You explore what past wound is being triggered, and what fear is hiding beneath the surface. Is it the fear of being seen, of being judged, of being abandoned if you outgrow others? Once you name the fear, you stop reacting blindly to it. You create space between the old trigger and your new choice. This is where change begins, not by overpowering the pattern, but by understanding it. When you realize that sabotage is a form of inner loyalty to your past self, your old identity, your childhood programming, you can begin to renegotiate that loyalty. You can thank it for trying to protect you, while firmly telling it that your life today requires a different strategy, that staying small is no longer safe, that risking growth is the new path to security. You don't need to get rid of the sabotaging part of you, you need to help it evolve. You need to show it through action that new experiences are not as dangerous as it once believed, that failure doesn't destroy you, that being visible doesn't mean abandonment. Each time you take a step despite the fear, you rewire the nervous system. You prove to yourself that safety and expansion can coexist. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, compassion, and repeated exposure to new behaviors. It means catching yourself when you start to pull away, when you delay, when you make excuses, and then asking, "What am I protecting myself from right now?" And more importantly, what would happen if I didn't run? It means sitting with discomfort rather than acting it out, because discomfort is not danger, it's a sign that you're crossing into new territory. Eventually, what used to feel threatening becomes familiar. Your system starts to trust you. The inner alarm quiets down, and that's when you start to notice something powerful. You no longer need to sabotage to feel safe. You can hold both success and self-love. You can show up, speak your truth, take risks, without fear of being destroyed. Not because you've become fearless, but because you've stopped fighting yourself. Self-sabotage is a defense, not a defect. And once you start listening to what it's trying to say, you'll find that your greatest blocks often contain the blueprint for your deepest breakthroughs. Many people think they're stuck because of a lack of motivation or discipline, but more often they're trapped by childhood beliefs about what they're allowed to have, feel, or become. These beliefs form the unconscious ceiling of your life, your upper limit. You might desire abundance, love, or success, but if a younger version of you learned that too much joy brings punishment, too much attention leads to rejection, or too much ambition makes you unlovable, then you will unconsciously sabotage any experience that rises above those internal limits. The moment things begin to go too well, you'll feel anxious, guilty, or disconnected, not because something's wrong, but because you've gone beyond the boundaries of what your childhood self believes is safe. These beliefs don't come from logic, they come from lived emotional experience. If love was inconsistent in childhood, you might unconsciously believe that intimacy always ends in loss. If your achievements were ignored or punished, you might believe that success equals isolation. The result is a silent contract within your psyche that says, "I can be happy but only this much. I can be seen but not too much. I can succeed but only if I stay small enough not to threaten anyone." These invisible limits become your default operating system. This is why you might notice a pattern where, just as things start going well in your life, you do something to mess it up. You pick a fight, procrastinate, ghost a good relationship, overspend, or suddenly feel overwhelmed with self-doubt. It's not because you're irrational, it's because your inner child is pulling the brakes. Your adult self wants expansion, but your child self still equates expansion with danger, so you hit the upper limit and retreat to the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. To break this cycle, you must identify the original belief that formed your upper limit. Ask yourself, what did I learn about happiness, success, or love in my early life? Was it safe to be joyful? Did I have to dim myself to stay connected? These questions uncover the emotional rules you still unconsciously obey. The moment you bring them into awareness, you create the opportunity to renegotiate those rules, to tell your inner child, that rule helped you survive then, but we don't need it anymore. True growth means expanding your nervous system to tolerate more goodness, more visibility, more success, and more love than you were originally taught was safe. It means allowing guilt or anxiety to rise when you surpass an old ceiling, and not interpreting that discomfort as a signal to shrink back. That discomfort is not a problem. It's a sign you're moving beyond inherited limits. Instead of retreating, you can learn to breathe through it, stay with it, and remind yourself that growth does not equal betrayal. You must also pay attention to how the upper limit shows up in subtle forms. It may not always be dramatic sabotage. It might be chronic self-doubt, perfectionism, settling for less, or feeling undeserving. These patterns are not flaws, they're survival strategies designed to keep you within the bounds of what your early self believed was allowed. Compassion is essential. You can't bully yourself into expansion. You must guide yourself with understanding. Meet the fear beneath the sabotage. Speak to it like a scared child. Let it know you're not abandoning it, you're growing with it. The irony is, once you start doing this inner work, you realize that your upper limit was never real. It was a story, built from moments you couldn't fully process as a child, and like all stories, it can be rewritten, not erased, rewritten. You won't eliminate fear, but you'll learn how to move forward with it. You won't silence the critic overnight, but you'll stop letting it drive the car. With practice, you'll develop a new baseline, one where joy, love, and success feel not just possible, but safe. The ceiling begins to rise. And that's when life changes, not just externally, but internally. You realize you're no longer playing a role you inherited. You're creating a self you chose, not bound by childhood scripts, but guided by adult awareness, not shrinking to stay safe, but expanding to meet your potential. Your childhood beliefs may have shaped your upper limits, but they do not have to define your future. Most people don't realize it, but they're more afraid of healing than they are of staying wounded. Because when the pain goes away, when the anger quiets down, when the trauma is no longer the main character, you're left with a terrifying question: who am I now? Pain, as hard as it is, gives you identity. It gives you certainty. You know how to function with it. It becomes the lens through which you see the world, the excuse for why you don't take risks, the shield that protects you from rejection. Without it, there's nothing to hide behind. You're exposed, not just to others, but to yourself. This fear isn't weakness. It's your nervous system trying to protect you from the unknown. Even if the pain is unbearable, at least it's familiar. You've built your habits, beliefs, and relationships around it. You know who you are when you're hurting. You know how to navigate life when you expect the worst. But if you let go of that story, if you release the belief that you're broken, that you're not enough, that love always leaves, then you have to face the vast open space of possibility. And possibility is scary, because it means change. It means responsibility. It means stepping into a version of yourself who no longer gets to say, "I can't because I'm still healing." You fear who you'd become without the pain because deep down, you know that healing would require you to grow, to dream, to love again, to fail without blaming the past. That version of you, the one beyond the pain, feels like a stranger, maybe even a threat, because they'd ask you to show up differently, to take the job, leave the relationship, speak your truth, trust your instincts. That version of you has no crutch, no identity built on suffering, just power, just presence, just possibility. And if you've lived most of your life surviving, then thriving can feel like a betrayal to the parts of you that were just trying to make it through the day. This is why real healing isn't just about letting go of the past. It's about grieving the version of you that only existed to carry it. It's mourning the identity you built around your scars. It's honoring the role pain played in keeping you alive, while also choosing not to let it define your future. That choice takes courage. It means stepping into unknown terrain. It means realizing that healing isn't an endpoint, it's a threshold. And what's waiting on the other side is not perfection but truth, wholeness, and a life that reflects who you really are, not who you became just to survive. If the idea of being free from pain makes you uncomfortable, that's not failure, that's a sign you're on the edge of transformation. Because fear shows up not only when you're in danger, but also when you're close to something powerful, and nothing is more powerful than the you that exists beyond the story of suffering. Not because you deny what happened to you, but because you're no longer ruled by it. Healing asks you to get honest. What would I lose if I stopped suffering? What roles, relationships, or excuses would no longer fit? What possibilities would I finally have to face? These questions are uncomfortable, but they're also liberating. They invite you to meet the part of you that's been buried beneath the pain, the part that's always known how to rise, how to love, how to live freely. You fear who you'd become without the pain. Not because that self is weak, but because that self is powerful. And power can feel dangerous when you've been taught to play small. But you don't have to be small anymore. You don't have to wear pain like armor. The world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs the whole one, the real one. And that version of you has been waiting beneath the wounds, not for the pain to disappear, but for you to remember who you are without it. Most people wait for clarity before they act. They wait until they feel confident, safe, and fully prepared to take the next step. But when it comes to emotional healing, that moment rarely comes. Healing doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It happens when you move forward despite not feeling ready. The nervous system is wired to keep you in familiar patterns, even if those patterns are destructive. So when you try to shift, when you try to speak up, set boundaries, or choose something healthier, your system screams, "Stop, it's not safe yet." But that fear isn't a warning of danger. It's a sign you're moving beyond the cage of survival, and that cage only unlocks when you take action before your mind says it's okay. Healing is not about waiting until the stars align. It's not about collecting enough wisdom, doing enough shadow work, or sitting with your journal long enough for fear to disappear. Fear is not the enemy of healing. Avoidance is, because every time you postpone a step until you feel completely certain, you reinforce the idea that you're not capable of handling discomfort, and that belief is what keeps you stuck. You don't grow by feeling safe. You grow by realizing that safety is something you create by showing up, not something you wait around to be given. Acting before you feel ready means telling the truth in a relationship, even if your voice shakes. It means leaving a toxic environment, even if you have no perfect backup plan. It means applying for that opportunity, sharing your story, forgiving yourself, not because the fear is gone, but because you're done letting fear make the decisions. Healing happens in those small, terrifying moments where you lean in anyway, where you choose to act in alignment with who you want to become, not who you've been trained to be. You might expect that healing will feel calm, or clear, or full of aha moments, but often it looks like chaos, like saying no and then trembling in guilt, like crying after setting a boundary, like taking a step and wanting to run back. That's not failure, that's the nervous system adjusting to your expansion. Those are growing pains, not signs that you should stop. In fact, when you feel most unready, is often when the step matters most. Because healing is less about how you feel, and more about what you do with those feelings. You will never think your way into wholeness. You have to walk into it. You have to decide again and again that even if fear is present, even if shame shows up, even if old stories try to pull you back, you're not going to abandon yourself again. You've done that enough. And every time you act with love toward yourself, especially when it's uncomfortable, you teach your brain and body a new reality. You're telling your inner child, "I'm not waiting for the world to say I'm safe. I choose safety now. I choose movement now. I choose life." Real transformation begins at the edge of resistance. It begins where you normally stop and turn around. That edge, the one that says "not yet, you're not ready, stay small," is the exact place where you reclaim your power, not by conquering the fear but by carrying it with you as you act anyway. Each step forward is a message to your inner system. I'm capable of handling what's next. I don't need to be perfect, I just need to be present. So if you're waiting for the right moment, let this be it. Let this